Hello everyone. Up next, we will be discussing MarTech best practices and the future of the industry post-Covid-19. Here to speak about this, we have Nikki Taylor, Marketing Growth Strategy Director for the Asia Pacific at UPS. Fun fact about Nikki, she was an elite gymnast growing up, and her claim to fame is she performed one international competition representing Australia in Germany when she was just 15. And joining her will be Sean Roy, Consumer Insights Lead for Southeast Asia and Taiwan at GlaxoSmithKline. Sean is a bit of a foodie, and his claim to fame is that he's tried the cuisine of almost all countries. Please welcome Sean and Nikki.
Thank you. Thank you, Luke.
Thanks, Luke. So okay. I'll get started. Okay, I'll get started. So hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. As Luke said, my name is Nikki. I'm the Marketing Growth Strategy Director for UPS. I look after the Asia Pacific region. I've been in marketing for many years. I'm not going to say how long, give away my age, but let's just say I've definitely come up through different transformations that we've done. And MarTech and CRM programs is one of my backbones and one of the key things that I'm quite passionate about. So I look forward to talking about this with you all, and definitely had some key learnings in the recent months with COVID-19, and happy to share those as well with everybody. So over to you, Sean.
That's great. First of all, I'm so happy to kind of be with you on this fireside chat, and I have very fond memories of me participating in another conference with you. So it's great to be back with you, and you're a tremendously good speaker. So it's an honor. Now about me, I'm Sean. As Luke told, I'm part of GSK. I'm leading the insights function over there, and essentially I'm very passionate about consumers. Rather, I would say consumers is an understatement. I'm very passionate about human behavior. It drives me. I'm human obsessed, and right now, GSK as an organization is also going through transformation, a lot of mergers which happened for the last 2 years, and therefore a lot of new practices, including MarTech practices, which is coming in the organization and changing the landscape. We are in a very fast trajectory of learning new things, and that's keeping us on our toes. And I would definitely like to speak about that more. So, Nikki, I think I will pass the baton to you, and let's start.
Okay, so I think, with marketing technology, or MarTech as we refer to it, it's really essential to creating our agile and fluid structures and driving customer engagement. But by harnessing a well-considered MarTech stack, as marketers, we can bring to order the overwhelming volumes of data that we collect both online and offline. But I guess one of the first, things I was going to tackle was, well, how do we determine that we purchase the right stack, and what are some of the challenges that we face if we're starting out or if we're adding into that stack later? So I know for myself in previous companies that I've worked with, and this is going back a good, I want to say probably maybe 8 years. So it really was more in the infancy stages where we had not as well-versed MarTech stacks. The way that we went about it was quite in a silo approach, and we ran into a midst of problems because as a marketing team we decided on click dimensions, which is very similar to Aliquot or Marketo, but we didn't take into consideration how that we would pull the data out, which IT owned at the time, and how we would pull in customer preferences, how we would sync that up to sales and build on what we had. So we looked at it purely as we want to push out EDMs, we want to evolve that slightly, we want to test. That's great. Let's look at the best in one of the best ones and let's go with that. But we forgot to really think what else would go into this and what other departments need to be a part of that to bring it forward. I think that's one of the key problems we face going forward. I know that currently UPS faces the same as what some of my other companies have and still do, is that integration between a Marketo or a CRM program. It's always the data that tends to be a little bit of a minefield for us. So, for example, you come from a company that's been around a really long time. I work in the logistics industry, so they've been around for hundreds of years, like UPS, hundreds of years. Or if you could Kinagal in the past, I think they're up to 150, I don't know. The banking's the same. You've got legacy data, right? So you've got legacy data sitting in whatever system that was developed. On top of that, you'll probably have a preference center, right? So with all the new laws of and other ones in the US, right? So are you in? Can I email you? What's availability rate? So I have a preference center. My data's over here. How do I get that into my MarTech stack? Is there a good way to do that? Do I need another stack on top of that? Then it goes to the next level of, well, we're looking at customer segmentations, right? So how do I better define my customer? How do I understand where they are in the customer journey or what type of customer they are? So for me, it's quite easy. I can dissect them by segments, as in automotive, retail, e-commerce, healthcare. I could dissect them by small business, occasional shippers versus middle market. I've got all of that, bring that in, and how do I really lock into that data and actually do something with it? And we're going to talk about some of the challenges of their own, but I think one of the key things when you're looking at developing your stack is figuring out what you're wanting to do. And there's some approaches. So, for example, a lot of the larger companies, and my company included, look at some of the big players. So it's an all-in-one. So Marketo syncs with Salesforce, syncs with analytics. So I've got my analytic tools. I've got my retargeting with Adobe Analytics as well, and I got my Marketo. So eventually it should all stack up. I want to add in, other things, chatbots, other platforms. It should, but it doesn't always work that way. Or you might have started off something different. Other people look at best in breed, so they might have a little bit more of a hybrid approach where not as large scale organizations, maybe it's more small, medium size, and they're looking at HubSpot. But then, with their needs, they also need some stack that helps them with chatbots. It also helps them with something else in the analytical tools like Google. So, you can have a different hybrid approach if that's better. And I think you really have to take a step back in the beginning, see what you've been given as a legacy. So should it stay? Should it change? What's the cost to change? What's in the short term and the long term, right? And do you want an all-in-one, or are you going to go for best in breed for whatever your size of your company is? I think those are some of the key things that you should be looking at when you're either building it from scratch or you're starting to add on or you're looking to revamp it. I'm going to hand it over to you, Sean, on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it was lovely to hear you and hear some of your perspectives and the challenges. I can't agree more. But one of the human challenges, in adoption of MarTech within the organization, in kind of integrating and making MarTech part of the culture. I think that's one of the biggest challenge. Sometimes we bring on a lot of systems, a lot of procedure, a lot of automation, tech. But then, one of the biggest questions which I have in my mind is, does the organization have the culture? Is the organization developing the culture internally for the people to adopt to such changes? So I think it kind of goes hand in hand. So obviously, that can be handled through a lot of training within the organization, or it can be handled through a lot of alignment, process, collaboration, all that. But more importantly, the theme which which came in my mind when you were speaking is that, we do all this, we kind of ensure what is the right stack, but how we can basically bring people into seeing the value of such changes within the organization. So that's one of the challenges. Secondly, I think MarTech, as a tool, should kind of enhance knowledge generation and should scale up the level of knowledge orientation within the organization. I think that's also one of the challenge, because there are a lot of tech stuffs, a lot of MarTech solutions, but how much people are using it correctly, or how much people are using it in a relevant way? I think that's a question mark, which always comes to my mind. It's a very large process within the organization, to bring everybody on the same page and to get running everything, at a kind of a, very, very similar way. So that's one of the challenges. I think what people and what employees need to see within the organization is the value that they are going to get out of this MarTech tools. And there has to be a very good work which needs to happen around that. Another challenge which I feel in an organization is to do with the point of redundancy. Sometimes, all these automations, tools, and techniques, they come in for the intent of making the life easier, because essentially when you're automating things, when you're creating MarTech solutions, it's about creating the culture of DIY. Also, and when you're when you're getting into the DIY mode of thinking, I think intrinsically the expectation that it should be very easy to use, but sometimes it so happens if we don't collaborate with people from before, it might end up being more steps in the process of your work, and instead of seeing it as a simplification, you might just kind of see it as something which is an add-on burden. So again, coming back to the point, the value should be established. Yeah. So hi, Nikki.
It's okay, just keep talking. You'll see it when I talk.
Yeah. So
I think with that, I think we can move on to. Maybe we move on to the poll, and then we can see what.
Yes. So I'm going to push to the audience now. Already done. So I guess we need to wait for some time now for their responses.
Let me come in real fast. I think that the audience is not going to be able to see the poll at the moment because it's on the responses. So let me push it back to the poll. So just a couple of questions for everybody. So before I implemented or added to our MarTech stack, I consulted, informed, and got buy-in from. If you could answer these questions, everyone, it'd be great. In the meantime, I'll pass it back to our speakers.
Thanks, appreciate that.
Okay, so what do we do now?
So while the audience is answering these questions, maybe we could go on to what you guys would do or what your guys' answers to this would be, and then we can go and see what the audience's answers to this is.
Okay.
Sounds great. So that sort of leads us to our next question, which is collaboration and buy-in, and why it's, in my opinion, key to success. Great to see that 50%, I don't know how many people have, okay, 15 people have done it, but at least 50% have properly engaged buy-in and informed all departments and stakeholders on a local, regional, global level. I think everyone says it, we shouldn't be siloed. We need to make sure that we get everybody involved, but in reality, it doesn't happen, and this is actually where the problem comes, definitely with the data. So for example, as I said, 7-8 years ago, marketing team, we signed off on it, procurement signed off on it. What was not, two key things that were missed, IT did not buy in to allow us to connect to the data, which meant that the integration, automation flow, and what we really wanted to do with it was made redundant. And on top of that, we couldn't successfully define with sales when we would pass them a lead. We have similar problems with UPS in the fact that with the data, we're having issues with that, but they're sorting that out. The other one is with sales, is sort of at an impasse. You know, they have multiple accounts with companies and sub-companies, and we need to know if we're talking to one person in the company and where they are, but the way that sales is structured is so different to our MarTech, and it's a little bit of an impasse there. So it's always said, but I think, you know, when Sean and I were chatting before, we can't stress enough, if you're ever going to look at new MarTech, make sure you, like with any procurement process, who are your key stakeholders? Who needs to be informed? Who needs to be engaged? Who actually needs to have buy-in? Make sure all of those are done across all your departments. And for someone that is typically always sat and looked after an APAC region, have done global as well. But as APAC, or definitely on the countryside, there's nothing worse than getting MarTech given to you. And I've had that, and we even had that recently, and I managed corporate to up their contract and buy in for us, but there's no point giving us a tech if it doesn't work. It doesn't work in your local market. I mean, how many times have you sat there, corporates rolled it out, and they can't do it in Vietnamese? They can't do it in Chinese.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's just redundant for me. So that's great. We want to do this on a global level, but you forgot to check if it works for me locally. So that's just a key, I would say. It's something we all know, but I would stress time and time again.
Yeah, I think I can't agree more. And I think the human nature is kind of, whenever something new comes in, and more so if it comes in without any alignment or buy-in, there will be a resistance. There will be a resistance to change. But having said that, when the company feels that there should be something which should be implemented and and the top management feels there's a lot of value, then we can't also waste too much of time in implementing that. So I would say maybe it's kind of a hybrid approach that you bring the process into the system, but at the same time, you start it and then you start kind of, as you progress, it's more of an agile solution wherein you kind of progress some, you correct some, then you progress some, you correct some. So that's the kind of feedback process which kind of is helpful for a kind of adoption to technology or MarTech process. Secondly, I think, as I told you, it's very important to show the value, the local countries, APAC level, SEA level, whatever. If they see the value, if they see basically what they're going to get and is going to solve their problems, their solutions, I think that communication and that establishment is very important. I think that kind of makes the project and the tech implementation very successful. And secondly, everybody in the organization, they are wanting to perform and they're wanting to basically implement the learning to another level where they can basically shine or where they can do something which can bring about change. So essentially, it should help them join the dots in the sense like, where there are many different pieces of learning, bring them together. That's also kind of a collaboration. Bring those different sets of learning. It can be in different regions globally, and kind of helping and aiding in meta learning process. And the process should be a little easy for them to kind of do and see that what are the kind of larger patterns coming in. Secondly, you were talking about one point last time when we discussed, Nikki, was the point about real time, how real time we can get with the data and how actionable it can be, so when they see this kind of value, they kind of really start using it. That's a way also to kind of, collaborate, according to me. Yeah. So we can move ahead. So how do you move forward when your MarTech is not fully integrated? Nikki, I would like to hear a point of view on this.
Yeah, so I have two good examples, right? One is a MarTech that sits outside of what you normally get in a full scope anyway, and the other one is within the full scope, how it's not integrated and we didn't spend and we've still gone ahead. So the first one, I give you an example. So we use Meltwater. For those that don't know what Meltwater is, it monitors the sentiment, your share of voice on a PR level. It's how we know what our effort is worth with all our pitching, with all our media and everything like that. But it gives us a lot of insights. So it gives us insights on competitors. It gives us insights into what's been spoken in the market. trends, and it also gives a sentiment of, the feeling towards our company. But obviously, this is quite a specialized MarTech in itself, so it can, but it is harder to also integrate this into your others. And I think it's important to acknowledge that sometimes you're going to have to consolidate and take leverage of that, write reports, spell them out to senior management, and take those learnings and plug them into, the ideation sessions for everything else that you're doing. And that's sort of, MarTech is supposed to speed that up, but we can't always do that. So I think that's one key thing, that you need to acknowledge what some teams are doing, and that it can actually affect your marketing team, so that are much more tactical. They still leverage. So I look after the three teams. One is PR, one is digital, and one is small business and CRM. So in our Monday meeting, we all talk about what's happening and how it might affect the other person, and definitely these ones come into play. The other great example is that, in my previous job, we didn't have the resources, the connection wasn't there with all the data that we wanted, so we just didn't move it ahead. I absolutely give props to GPS and my predecessors that set this up, because basically they said, well, we will do it. We will act like the machine and do it until it's fixed. We use Marketo. So you have three programs: new customer care, growth program, and inactive. So it basically, to move them along, whether they are to activate, to nurture, or grow, there's certain triggers. And some of those triggers are triggered by how much, if they have shipped, how much revenue they have, and what volume they have. Now that is in our data warehouse, and that's definitely different to where our data preferences are, different to what Marketo is synced up with. So my team basically take all the data out, do everything on the side in the little Excel spreadsheets, upload the smart lists again to Marketo like it had done it itself, and moves it along so it can do the automation flow next time. So I think, one of the key things I would shout out is that sometimes it's not easy, and although it's supposed to be automated, sometimes you'll have to go to a little bit more of a manual task to keep it moving along, because ultimately the fix of that may take longer, and you will see benefits in it. So it's a lot of work. They do a great job. But the difference is, my previous team, we decided not to do it. We thought, it's too hard. And definitely this team has shown me that it can be done. We still run into problems, but, don't give up. And there's always a way. It just might not be as automated as you'd hoped, I guess, is the key, but keep going.
No, I think that's a great point. The fear factor always plays in terms of adopting to something new. And, that brings me to a point that, it's very important for us to learn cross functions. I might be from the marketing department, but what is happening in my customer service or logistics or any other department, they might be adopting some new ways of doing things, and I think that's also brings me back to the previous point of collaboration too, so if you know what people are doing, and you're not acting in silos as a department or as an individual, you get to know a lot of good practices, the best practices, and you can basically bring that in, integrate that in the system. So that's one way, bring new thing into your department. The second thing is that you've already implemented something and you need to move and push through with that. So I think that happens through, as I told, periodic engagements, periodic clinics, I would say, hearing people out, connecting at a global level, regional level, micro level, gathering a lot of feedback. And as I say in Insights, a lot of focus groups, we need to carry internally within the organizations also. We need to kind of carry a lot of feedback, and we need to kind of speeden up or smoothen up the integration process. I think, so it kind of ties back to the previous point of, collaborating, buying, integrating, it's kind of a step-by-step thing. And it's very important. And one example I'd like to give is from my organization. We have some drop-in clinics for kind of our observatory tool, which kind of stores a lot of knowledge and insights for the marketing department. And we try to kind of make it better and better, with agility, with all this drop-ins and everything. I think we are running out of time. So So let's
We are running out of time a little bit, but we have a couple of questions from the audience. A couple of questions that I'd like to focus on, if that's okay. The first question that I had come in was how do you increase? So we can go back to the main section if you'd like. But the first question that I had come in was how do you increase buy-in at an early stage for a new MarTech stack? So if you have your organization, you have a lot of different players involved. How do you increase the buy-in at an early stage for a new MarTech stack?
Well, can I go for that, Nikki? So I think, there are two ways. One is that in the company, as I told, is in a rush, and they definitely see a value in particular MarTech stack, and they want to push it. So at that time, maybe it's if you try to get buy-in of each and everybody, the process will be very slow. So essentially, you need to kind of launch it, and then you need to kind of make it better and better, iterate, reiterate. You have to follow the agile way of working and make it better. So that's one. Now, the second one is that if you have to kind of get buy-in of everybody from the very beginning, it's very important to involve the department heads who are basically going to see the value out of this kind of a tech implementation or MarTech. It's very important to also assure that the team is going to get support in this implementation. So it's early buy-in from the key leadership stakeholders and the key members is very important. It's very important to kind of carry on a roundtable discussion and to show the concept of the stack and to basically show the value, what it is going to bring. And essentially also it's very important to give examples of other good organizations who have kind of, implemented that and the kind of value they're seeing out of it. But I would just like to hear Nikki's perspective also on this.
Sure, great points there, Sean. So I think the key thing is remember your audience. So typically you'll be talking to senior management. So what do they want to know? What's my return on investment? So if I'm going to invest in it, I don't know if it's 50K, 100K, whatever it is, if it is a one-time fee or is it a subscription fee? So how much is it going to cost me? And then what do I get out of it? So it could be part of your transformation. So you could reduce cost of employment of it. It could be reduced in efficiency, and then you can look at man hours and calculate that out. But definitely try and put that dollar there and try and put what is the return on investment and when will you see that, right? So I'm going to go on this journey and year one, am I going to get a return? If not, year two, am I going to get a return? Also, if it's, for example, a Marketo or, a CRM program, so the benefit to the customer, the better experience you would look at, you should have an increase in for me, it's volume, revenue per piece, but I don't know what your metrics are, but there would be something that you have an increase, whether it be membership or sales or something. So you should see a spike in that, and you should be able to forecast. So you want to look at forecasting that as well, because that's definitely going to get their attention. That's number one. The other thing is if it's a project of a large size, then who's going to be your key senior management sponsor? So it doesn't have to be from your department, but there is normally a key exec that is sponsoring these type of projects. And they're the ones that are going to help you put by. The other thing I would say is that can you link it to digital transformation? Everyone's going through digital transformation right now. So can you link it through to that? And does it fall under must have, nice to have, maybe in the future, right? And if you can link it to that, I mean, that's going to add because it goes back to your business strategy. So there's another reason of why you're doing it. The other thing, which I forgot to add earlier, is obviously make sure you define what success looks like. So, and that will be short term. So in the first, it could be 30 days or it could be 3 months, depends on the project. But in 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, what does success look like? So therefore, it can be measurable. Definitely when you're talking about budgets, senior managers, this is the language as marketers we need to address them in, and we need to define our briefs and our pitches accordingly. Hope that helps.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. It was very well put. It was very wonderful. Well, so yeah, I think it kind of really brings me back to that whole theme. What I'm talking about is about creating value. It's about showing the value. I think that's very, very important. Yeah.
I think that's a good takeaway message for everybody today. All right, you guys. Thank you very much for your time today. For our audience members, go ahead and you can now click over to the next session and see the speakers at the next session. And thank you for your time today. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks, you so
everybody.
much.